Greetings and welcome to the NECAT Network's Nashville Predators Sports TV Camp. Today's program is brought to you in part by the Nashville Predators Foundation and powered by Smile Direct Club. I'm your host, Cameron McCaslin, and joining me today for the Nashville Predators are Lelah Downey and Pete Weber, who you have heard both on TV and radio here in Nashville as the voice of the Predators. How are you doing today, gentlemen?
I'm doing great, and I know that Willie is doing very well also. He had a huge trivia contest last night.
Yes, I did.
So also joining us are a collective of students and Nashville Predators fans right here in Nashville and all around the country. On today's show, we're going to hear from the hockey play-by-play legends as they talk about their careers and ask some questions from the kids on how they bring their hockey to the mat. So, guys, Pete, we'll start with you. Can you just give me a little bit of background on yourself, kind of how you started in television and how long you've been working with the Predators?
I've been working with the Predators since they started in the fall of 1998. And how I got started was by accident. I was a senior in high school. I didn't have the ability to play football that senior year because I had pinched a nerve in my neck. So I was hired by the local newspaper in Illinois, sent out to cover some high school games. And all of a sudden, one broadcast team that was seated right next to me in the press box, the guy had way too much coffee. So he had to go take care of that situation. And he handed the microphone to me. And that was really how, in many ways, accidentally, I had my first play-by-play call.
And Willie, can you talk to us a little bit? Tell us how you got your start with your career.
Well, I was fortunate enough to come to Vanderbilt University. That brought me to Nashville, and I always had an interest in broadcasting, but I was playing basketball and baseball there, and I wanted to play as long as I could, but I knew once my playing career was over, I wanted to stay in sports somehow. So that's when I was able to sort of get into broadcasting. A guy named George Placer, who has lived in Nashville his whole life, was the guy that sort of gave me my start, and I ended up doing some things on his sports talk radio show, worked my way into that, and right as sports were taking off in Nashville and we started getting teams like the Titans and the Predators coming to town, I was starting to get a little more experience. And then when Pete and the Predators came to town, I happened to be on the radio station that was carrying the game. So that's what got me involved with the Predators at the start. And so I was really lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And it's all sort of taken off from there.
Wonderful. So I know today we have a lot of students in the audience, people that have came here as both Nashville Predators fans and some of our kids who have never seen a lick of hockey. And so they have some questions for you guys that we hope that you can answer for them. And just, so we'll start with that. So if any of you guys want to ask the first question. Yeah, go ahead, Tuck.
All right. So first off, I want to say, it's so much fun. The first time I ever interviewed was doing you guys. So I'm really happy to do this again. And I wanted to ask, how has your routine changed for the broadcast to keep the same enthusiasm with no one in the stands?
That was curious, especially when we had the return to play and they were pumping in, video game sound effects for us, which we sort of picked up on pretty quickly. But I understood why they did that. If they had not, we would have heard the things that the players were saying on the ice, and that might not have been the most family-friendly situation for us. And Willie can talk to this too, without any question. After the competitive aspect of the game kicks in, it kicked in, at least in my mind, that way too. So that really wasn't so much a problem. Now, had I been in a basketball gym in Orlando and only heard the squeaking of the shoes on the floor, that might have been more difficult for me. Willie?
Yeah, it's first of all, Tuck, it's good to see you. I remember you interviewed Pete and I last year when we did this. So I know you've been working hard. I'll add to what Pete said. It is interesting when you're at a game, you feel the crowd, you feel the excitement. And it's just such a natural thing to play off of. So you had to sort of create that in your own mind. And that's part of the reason why they were able to put sound effects in our ears. So it may sound silly to put video game sounds, fake sounds almost, but it did sort of help add that feel that you're trying to recreate. But you had to sort of get your own enthusiasm. That's why there's really no substitute for being at the game. But we did our best to try to overcome that. And it was interesting being so many thousands of miles away from where the game was going on. But we did the best we could. And I think the league did a great job to try to make it as realistic as possible. And so everything went well, except for the Predators weren't able to win the games. We were hoping they were going to win a few more, and we could have stuck around and done a few more.
Right on. So something I saw just recently. So our goaltender here in Nashville, Pecker, had a baby yesterday. So I don't know if you guys have had a chance to reach out and congratulate or anything like that, but we want to send our congratulations from NECAT first and foremost. And just I had also seen that there are some other babies on the way from the Predators here the next couple months. How is that family dynamic working into how hockey's working out for some of those guys right now?
Well, I'd have to say right now, it's nice that the babies could be born before this next season gets going. So you have a chance to get acquainted with the new member of the family. And it was already that for Matt Duchene and now Pekka a couple of days ago. And today Pekka announced the name on social media. Paulus is going to be the name of his son.
Yeah, it's exciting. Pete and I are lucky enough to, we've been around long enough to where we see a lot of these guys come into the team and they're only 21, 22 years old, sometimes even younger when we first meet them. And you kind of watch them go through the different stages of their lives, right? First, they're just right out of high school or right out of college. Then you realize that, okay, they've got a serious girlfriend and now they're getting married and now they're having kids. So you watch them go and mature and grow up. They turn into men, in front of us. So we watch these families grow. It's really fun. And Pekka, this is his first child, and he's a little older than some of the guys on the team. So it's really exciting to watch that for Pekka because he's such a likable guy. He's going to be a great dad. And Pete and I have known Pekka since he was Pete, when did we first meet him? Probably when he was
2005, right in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've known him for a long time. This is going to be such an exciting thing for him.
And he is a couple of years older at 37 than my dad was when I was born. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge for him too.
Yeah.
I love that. So let's throw it back to the gallery for the students. Does anyone else have a question for us? Yeah, go ahead.
My name
Amaru.
So
Can you unmute your mic? There we go.
Here's my two questions. So do they use the same type of net to make hockey goals as they do for soccer goals, like the same nets for soccer and hockey?
The hockey goal is far smaller. It's 4 by 6 feet. And that's about 6 feet narrower than it is in soccer. So there is a bit of a difference there. Yes.
And here's two. I think what part of it that I was thinking of when you're asking that question is the material. Pete, when we stand next to a hockey goal and you feel that material in the goal, it feels a lot to me like a basketball net.
Yeah.
Feels. And I soccer goal I think might be something slightly different, but is it made mostly of nylon? Is that what we would say?
Yes.
It's similar material for sure because it gets hit repeatedly. Like just you shoot the basketball through the hoop. Constant hockey pucks are going into that goal, especially in the practices and the warm up, and a soccer goal, and it's got to be durable. It's got to last for a long time. So it's the same kind of material for all of those things.
So the soccer goal also droops a little bit more, the netting within there, than it does. And in hockey, it's so tight, sometimes the puck springs right back out.
Yeah, that's confusing for the announcers sometimes.
Thank you. Can I say question number 2?
We got the follow-up. Yeah.
Okay. So question number 2 is, can young people be broadcasters?
Well, I feel pretty young.
Yeah, I'll start it off, Pete.
Yeah.
A lot of I have seen, it's funny, Pete, you could probably think of a lot of this. They have they bring some young broadcasters to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Sometimes have them interview some of the players playing in the game. That's always really fun to hear what young people want to ask the the pros, the players that are playing in the Super Bowl or something like that. I've always thought that's good. So when you say, can young people be announcers, you totally can. I remember when I was a kid, I'll bet you anything that Pete would say the same thing. I would do a lot of pretend broadcasts. I would turn the volume down on the TV, and I would just start announcing what was going on the TV and record it into a tape recorder. And there's probably a lot of better ways to do it these days with your phone and different gadgets. My dad was a coach and an athletic director. And so I lived on a college campus. In fact, I'm wearing the sweatshirt of where I grew up, Manhattanville College, which is in New York. And I would go to games, and when there weren't anybody in the stands, I would go way up into the top of the gym, and I would just start announcing the game. And that would give me great practice on how to do it. So if you want to try it, that's a great way to start. Try it and record yourself, and then go back and listen to it and see how it sounds. And Pete, you might start off by saying, wow, that was really good. Or you might have a few parts where you're saying, whoa, I've got some things I need to practice.
Yeah. The reps are very important, Willie. The more you can get, the better.
Did you ever do that as a youngster, Pete? Did you ever record games?
I'm trying to remember myself being young, Willie, but yes, I would borrow my father's dictaphone and record games in his office when he was gone, and do the very same thing about turning down the television volume. And later on, when I wanted to do baseball and I was working in hockey already in Southern California, the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Angels would all give me, when they had them available, a vacant broadcast booth, and I'd bring microphone, mixer, and set everything up and do the recordings there. And thankfully, it sounded almost like a real broadcast.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good
question. So, again, any of our students have a question? Marie, go ahead.
What is the difference between a color commentator and a play-by-play person, and what makes each of them a good one?
Ooh, another good question.
Yeah.
I'll start. So the color commentator, or sometimes they call him the analyst, or he or she, that person more often than not is going to have a layer of expertise, either playing or coaching. Now there are exceptions. There can be some really good analysts that didn't necessarily play that sport or coach that sport, but they're just really good at observation, and they've picked up a lot of things. But that person is going to add, the reason they say color, it's like the play-by-play person is going to give you the straightforward what's happening. The analyst is going to give you why it's happening and try to give you some different layers as to why one person in the game or why one team is being successful. So the why is the color commentator, and the what is the play-by-play. And so, Pete, I'll leave it to you to give us your opinion of what makes a good one in both cases.
Well, it's really very subjective. It is dependent upon the viewer, the listener, to determine who explains things best to them as an individual. And I'm going to add one other layer to Willie on the color commentator or analyst. Not only the why, but sometimes the how things are happening and the description of what happened. And there's a little difference between radio and television, because on radio, you have to sort of paint the picture. On television, you get the chance to see the picture. So on radio, you're probably going to get a little bit more detail than you do on television, because on television, you are captioning, and on radio, you are describing.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction, is if you're listening to a game, the play-by-play person has an added responsibility, because they've got to tell you what's going on, and you've got to be able to picture that in your mind. You've got to be able to know if the puck is on the left side or the right side. Where, are you behind the net? Or are you in front of the net? you want to be as descriptive as you can with, a shot. For example, if you say somebody shoots, well, eventually on the radio, you'd like to know, is it a slap shot? Is it a wrist shot? Is it a shot that was deflected? Was it a powerful shot? Was it a softer shot? These are all the little descriptions that every detail that you can give helps that listener paint the picture in their mind. And then the analysts, like Pete was saying, it's the why and the how. And so it's a really big art form. And Pete said it great. It's just being likable is a really a general term.
Yeah.
But so who do you like sitting around and watching a game with? I think that's sort of the mentality that every announcer has. Because if you get too technical and too descriptive and you use too many big words, some people are like, well, I don't want to listen to that person. My brain is scrambled. I like just that down to earth thing. One person we both have a huge amount of respect for, Terry Crisp, who worked with Pete for so long. He's one of the greatest I've ever heard in terms of just being the likable person you want to watch a game with, because he's just so much fun.
Your favorite uncle?
Yeah.
I've got a bit of a follow-up question for that too. So, I know for you guys, you both made some legendary calls, and you guys are always, it's funny because sports has history to it and people follow up. I know when it comes to right now, this generation, the people that are watching this, they're watching stuff on YouTube, and that's how they're regurgitating old plays, just highlight reels and things like that. Do you guys think differently about those moments? Like I know this recently, Willie, you kind of had the chance, at Vanderbilt to see Sarah Fuller kick, and that was a big deal, and it was going to be, all over the news, and people are going to be watching that for years to come. You had a little bit of time to prepare for how you were going to call those moments. Just wonder if you put any extra thought into that when it comes to that, or the Stanley Cup and all that build up that came a couple years ago whenever we were in the finals here in Nashville. How do you process that information and knowing that, like, whatever I say here, people are going to be talking about this for years to come because they're going to rewatch this. So if you don't get it right, it's going to be problematic.
It's a great question. And I think about it a lot. During these last few months where, as you said, there's been a lot of great, especially you go back to March, April, May, when there were hardly any games of any kind going on. There were a lot of classic games being broadcast. And it really gave me a chance to go back and watch how do the great announcers call those great moments. And a lot of the great moments are very spontaneous. So you don't have time to really think about what you're going to say if something happens. But you mentioned Sarah Fuller's kicks. I did put a little thought into that. And the only thing I wanted to be as spontaneous as I could, but the only thing I wanted to make sure I got right was first woman to score a point in a Power 5 college football game. If you think about it, that's a little bit of a mouthful, right? It's not something you just can spit out there. So I did write that down and make sure that I had that ready if and when she came out and tried the kick. So I usually don't, in my mind say, if the Predators just win this game, this is what I'm going to say as the horn sounds. You want that to be spontaneous and organic as much as you can. But for Sarah, I wanted to make sure that if that historic moment happened, that I said exactly what was happening in history. And so I was pretty happy with it. It's pretty exciting when something like that happens and there's only a couple calls that exist for a moment like that. And so that one will go down for a while for sure.
And how surprised were you to get home and hear your call on SportsCenter?
Well, I didn't see it right away. I had some people text me late that night that they had used that. It was one of the SportsCenter top 10. And because Sarah had played in the game 2 weeks before that. So I was wondering how much attention they would pay to the fact that she finally got a chance to kick and try some extra points. And sure enough, they did a pretty good feature on it. And that's why they used the call that we used on the Vanderbilt radio network. So that was a big thrill for me. I think, Pete, you've probably been on there a few times over the years, but that's always fun when they grab one of your things. And of course, on NHL Network, they're always using the calls from the teams. And so that's what, going back to your original question, you don't always get it just right. So you're paying attention, and you evaluate yourself, and you say, man, I wish I could have done that a little bit better. Or hopefully you say, all right, that sounds like it was supposed to. That was a big goal. That's why they're showing it on the highlight. That's your job. You want to relay the energy and the big moment to the fans.
And I agree with Willie on the spontaneity of it is what is most desirable, because otherwise it just sounds like, well, he brought his legal pad up there and he's reading off that, but maybe you don't get the emotion that you should have into it. For example, if you want to go back on YouTube, and you mentioned it, Cameron, look up Henry Aaron's home run that broke his tie with Babe Ruth in April of 1974. There are two calls there that you can observe and are listened to. And one of them is Vin Scully's, which I think was absolutely priceless. He let the crowd noise overtake things. He left after calling the home run. He went to the back of the booth, took a drink of water, then came back up front and gave his, and I'm not going to ruin it by telling you what he had said, but then there was the local call in Atlanta, which clearly was scripted. Now it got the emotion pretty much, but it really came out, there's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron. Clearly a script, and nothing nearly as pristine and as crystal clear beautiful as was Vin Scully's, who was doing the game for the Los Angeles audience, Los Angeles at Atlanta.
That's great. So thanks for answering that question for me, guys. To our students, do we have any other questions? Yeah, Lauren.
Okay, so since Nashville is known for their fans during hockey season, how has no fans being able to attend the games this year affected the team?
Ooh.
We'd have to be able to talk to him, Willie. That's been tough.
Yeah, it has changed so many things in terms of our ability, our access. In a normal situation, Pete and I are around the guys a lot, for practice, traveling from city to city. And so, you really feel like you're part of a group. So that's what's going on. And I'm sure the players feel that way, just being a little detached from the fans. And I'm sure they can't wait to the day where we can really get the full group of fans back in there. Now, there might be part of the season. We're still waiting as we sit here and we go through this, the actual schedule. We hope in the next couple of days they'll announce that we're going to start around January 13th. Hopefully they don't have to push it back any more than that. At first, though, Pete, it kind of looks like there won't be any fans in some buildings. There might be a small percentage of fans in other buildings. But I think the players at least got a taste of it in the return to play last year. They talked about, you have to create your own energy. You can't get that energy from the fans that they often feed off of.
They did take some of the local teams' natural sound and use it. Now, teams were designated home and road teams. So when the Predators were at home in their series with Arizona, we would hear what would be the Section 303 chants to an opposing goaltender. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. Calling out the goaltender's name and all that. But that was about it in terms of the natural flow of crowd noise. So, yeah, I'd have to say for the players, particularly those players from Nashville who acknowledge the seventh man, if you will, 6 on the ice and 1 more in the stands, for giving them the energy that they have played off now, going back since 2008.
Very good. So I've got another question that I think, kind of geared towards the people that are watching us. So to tell a story about myself, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and I did not know hockey because we didn't get the Stars until, I was probably about some of these guys' age. So hockey was not a thing that I grew up with in the way that I guess a lot of the same way that Nashville didn't have it, during that time period. But I learned the rules of hockey by playing a video game, NHL 93 by EA Sports. That's kind of how I learned how hockey rules worked. How do you think that video games have crept in and helped make new fans, out of younger people? And how does that kind of, play into what you guys are doing there with your play-by-play?
Willie, in Florida, weren't you in video games?
Say that again, Pete?
When you were growing up in Florida, when you were down there, didn't video games play a great role for you?
Well, I'll tell you where it came in for me. It's specifically for hockey. I didn't play that many video games, but I played some minor league baseball. And it's funny you mentioned, Cameron, NHL 93. In the summer of 94, I was in a place called St. Catharines, Ontario, which is really not far from Buffalo. It's really, if you picture it, it's near Niagara Falls, and it's between Buffalo and Toronto. So we're in Canada, so there's huge hockey people all over the place. I sort of was detached some from hockey because I moved from New York to Florida, but all the guys love to play on the road. We just had time to kill in the hotels, NHL 94. And so I started playing, and then honestly, it was kind of a fun thing. A couple of us liked to announce the games. We would all be sitting around because only 2 people could play at the same time. Oftentimes we were jammed into some hotel room, 10 or 12 of us, just waiting, just round robin playing each other. And that was a great way to learn the names of the players, especially the star players, and what they did well, right? Who were the best teams and stuff. So that did give you a feel. So I'm sure, Pete, there are a lot of young people. My son is one of them. He's got a buddy. They'll go play a 7-game series. You know, I'll take the Jets. You take the Stars. We'll play best out of 7. And, you know, I do think it's great marketing by the league. They have now, you notice this, Pete, guys like Mike Emmerich and Ed Olczyk, the top voices, they voice over. They actually announce the games while they're going on.
And they get exhausted. It usually takes 2-3 days to record every name and every phrase they need to do to put it all together. And I've been told stories about how they walk out of there far more tired than they would be out of a multiple overtime playoff game in real life. And the other thing about the video games now, they are so much closer to reality in the appearance of the players and the appearance of the play than they were back in the NHL 93 days.
So I know one of the big things that we like to teach at NECAT is there's a lot of different ways to get into different kinds of careers. When it comes to sports, by the time I was done with high school, my playing days were long past me. But I was able, here I am now, and I'm talking to you guys that are, work for a professional hockey team. Can you talk to me a little bit about how these guys that are watching right now with us, the students can find a job in hockey doing something, whether it be in television or something that, that has to do, maybe not necessarily with playing, but some of the things that the guys that are supporting you, the guys and gals, I should say, that are helping, put a game together. Talk to me a little bit about that and some of the different kind of career paths that are there if you wanted to get into sports broadcasting.
There are multiples when you think about it. And the best thing is the NECAP program that you have right now, learning different aspects of broadcasting and then carrying forward with that. And the other thing is there's nothing better than getting an internship with a hockey club, a baseball club, a football club, a basketball club, a lacrosse club, a soccer club. You can learn so much being behind the scenes without having the incredible pressure of being the person who's out in front of everybody and needing to perform. And then it's a case of use the internet, put up your videos, put up your audio, and give people the chance to consume what you do and also keep a record of how you progress in doing this. Don't lock yourself into any one thing right now. I mean, I did AAA baseball for 15 years, in addition to doing the hockey that I have done going back many, many years. And I just wanted to be in the major leagues. So I went to the major leagues in the NHL.
Yeah, I would add, as Pete said, and he and I have done this with you guys now for a few years. And I think it's a great program you guys are in because you get a wide range of skills, operating the camera, producing the segment, hosting the segment, making sure everything technically is sound, stage manager. When you do games, if you're part of a game, there's a statistician, there's spotters, there's lots of people that help the broadcast, and a lot of people, and I would be one of them. For example, when the Titans came to town and I was doing some local radio, I told the Titans, hey, if there's any job that you need done during a game in any of the booths, you had the Titans radio, you had the other team's radio team, you had the television crew. sometimes they would just need an extra person to keep stats or spot or do something. And I got some great experiences just being around the people that were doing it at the top level. So that's a great way to be involved. Just chip in, whatever. And when you're at a program like the NECAT, you're getting these skills to where you can drop in at something like this for a lot of games. Because think about our city. You've got games going on all over the city in normal circumstances. We're going to be back to that soon enough, where you got college basketball games going on, men's, women's games. You've got Predators games. You've got Titans games. You've got high school games. So there's a lot of opportunities to just get around and be a part of something. And if you've got a good skill set like you're learning right now, you'll be of use to your school or other schools around.
That's great. Students, is there any more questions that you guys have? Yeah, Yusuf.
Hi. Me and my brother have a question, but I'll go first. I do a lot of public speaking and communication, and I'm always trying to find different ways to improve myself, my tone, and things like that. And so as an announcer, what are some ways that you guys have been able to improve yourselves when announcing for hockey?
Well, I'd say the best way is record yourself and listen. And then I think you will pick up on what you need to do, maybe need to do better or need to do more of. So, and I think when we listen to ourselves, we probably are our own worst critics. So then, Yusuf, you have to find someone who can counterbalance your being such a strict critic of yourself and work off that.
It's a great question you're asking, because it's important. And first of all, I have to say, just the way you asked that question, it tells me that you've thought about it and you sound really good asking the question. So there is something to just practicing on your own. And I'll add to what Pete said, because what he said is the best way. Just record yourself as often as you can, go back and listen to it. And also compare that to what do the best people sound? How does that compare to the top announcers in your field? And you don't want to imitate other announcers. You don't want to try to mimic them, but you want to have a general sound. It's like when you hear good music, right? You know what good music sounds like. And then if you're making your own music, how does your music hit the same level as the good as your favorite music? So it's a little bit intangible, but it's a general sound. It's not necessarily specific, but there are things that you learn as you go. The more you do it, the repetition, inflection, right? Making sure that you punctuate the right way. When the big moment happens, not to scream too much, right? That's a tendency that some young announcers have. When the exciting moment happens, you start, ah! You don't want to sound like you're going crazy. You want to really learn, almost like you're trying to be a singer. You use your diaphragm, try to use everything that your voice has to offer. And that can take some time to really learn and learn about yourself. But the more you listen to yourself and practice, you'll make a lot of strides in that area. And a lot of it is just 90% of it is going to happen completely naturally. It's going to happen over time just by doing it more and more.
That was a great question.
Ian,
do you have a question?
Hasan has one, I think.
Yeah.
Which do you prefer, radio or TV? Announcing.
I prefer radio. I definitely prefer radio. I like being the guy that has the palette with all the colors on it and the chance to paint the whole picture.
Yeah, I think radio is a lot more fun. And radio, because it's the theater of the mind, like Pete said, here's the thing. Television is great, but television, you're really more part of a team. You have people talking to you. You have people directing and teaching. And we've done this exercise with you guys where you have somebody talking in your ear, a producer that's almost directing you where you're going to go next. Whereas in radio, you control all of that. You're the director. You're the producer. You're the one that has all of the control to say what you think is the most important thing going on. So that's why radio is probably a little bit more fun. But both are great both are great in their own right.
Leah, did you have a question?
Okay, me and Boston have a question, but my question shall come first because precedence. But what I was going to say is, have you ever been so enveloped in a game or a play or something that you completely blanked and you're not announcing anymore? You're just like, what is happening here? And what is it?
I don't necessarily recall having had one of those out-of-body experiences, but I could see where it could happen, and it's happened sometimes to my partners. But no, I've been, I guess in some ways I've been fortunate like that. Willie?
I think what comes to mind for that question is sometimes the game is so exciting that, and I think you get to this point when you're an announcer, and I think I had this sometimes in this rare times when you're having a good game as a player. They always say, don't think too much, right? The more you're thinking about what you want to say, the more chance you are of probably making a mistake. The best times, I think, when the game's so exciting and you're not even really thinking what you're about to say, you're just reacting. That's what I think about. And sometimes you have to fall back on that because, Pete, you can talk about some of the games we've done that go 2 or 3 overtimes.
Yeah.
That, you physically and mentally start getting a little tired when those things are going on. And like the question was earlier, you don't want to mess up the big moment.
Right.
So you really have to fall back on that muscle memory and just that laser focus and overcome the fatigue that starts happening. That's where that sort of that zone that she was talking about with that question, that's where that kicks in.
Yeah, and the adrenaline and those other things will take you through. But I'll tell you, when you were finally signed off from that broadcast that you've needed the adrenaline for, you are going to be one tired puppy.
Yes.
Okay, in Boston, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, for my question, I was wondering, what is y'all's favorite game that you've ever announced it?
Quite a few. I've had an AFC championship game where Buffalo, before going to its first Super Bowl, defeated the Raiders 51-3. Kind of hard to overlook that one. There was another where Buffalo was behind the then Houston Oilers, the current Tennessee Titans, 35-3 in the third quarter of a playoff game, and came back and won 41-38 in overtime. Magic Johnson, as a rookie, winning the NBA championship in 1980, subbing at center for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, although you might remember him more as Roger Murdoch, an airline pilot in the movie Airplane. And then let's just, the Buffalo Sabres' only Game 7 win ever, and that was back in 1997 over the Ottawa Senators. But the Preds games that stand out to me, Mike Fisher's triple overtime goal against San Jose in 2016, and then simply the entire run to the Stanley Cup playoffs, to the Stanley Cup final in 2017 here. Those were all very, very special to me. And it's sort of hard to differentiate between it among them because they're just masterpiece games that I was lucky enough to get to call.
Yeah, I think the overtime game winners are the ones that I think really are memorable because it's so intense, and at any moment your team could win or lose. That's what's so special about, especially in the playoffs, when you get one like that. And so Kevin Fiala for the Predators scored one a few years ago against the Blackhawks, our arch rival, and it was a big dagger in the series that the Predators eventually won. That one has always stood out to me. And like Pete said, just when you're any kind of a part of a broadcast of a team that has this long, long journey and wins a championship or gets to a new height that they've never gotten to before, those are memorable. So that, of course, the Stanley Cup run of 2017 is always going to be really, really special.
Did I hear a dog someplace? Was there a dog trying to sing Jingle Bells?
Yusuf, did you have another question?
Yes, I did. For the announcers, how do you differentiate between rambling and like actual announcing? Because one thing I noticed about announcing is that there's like tone and like, oh, he scored and blah, blah, blah. So how do you differentiate between when you're just rambling on and talking and like announcing?
Luckily enough in hockey, the intensity is so ever present at most times. And I'm just calling what's happening. I don't feel I have rambled too much. Now, when I rambled the worst in the last few years was when I did a stand-in on a Nashville SC game in Indianapolis. And I was at the studio here in Nashville, and the game was up there, and it was 0-0 final, or 0-0, as they love to say, and European football. And they totaled 4 shots on goal. There was some rambling. There was a challenge, but hockey rarely presents that to me. Willie?
Yeah, usually hockey is moving so fast that if you ramble, you're just not going to be able to do it because there's just not enough time. You'll miss some things if you ramble. So that's a good teacher, hockey, just the speed of hockey. But the thing I would keep in mind, regardless of whether it's hockey or any other sport, would be think about less is more. Right? The most concise way that you can say something, the better you are. It's not how many big words you can use or how descriptive. It's the combination of being right on point with what you're saying, but do it in a succinct way. And that goes back to listening to yourself. If you listen to yourself, I think you'll pick up on when you say, okay, I think I rambled a little bit there. I could have said that quicker. I could have been more efficient with that, because less can be more. Like Pete was saying before with Vin Scully, one of the best tools an announcer has is to say nothing. Just let the sounds of a radio broadcast or a television broadcast, let that be what paints the picture for you. That's all you need sometimes. So less can be more.
Very good. Are there any more questions from our gallery for students? Okay, great. Well, you guys have all done great today. I think this has been some wonderful questions. That's about all the time we have here at the Kneecap Network for the Nashville Predators Sports TV Camp. We want to thank Willie Downey and Pete Weber for joining us. We also want to thank the Nashville Predators Foundation, empowered by Smile Direct Club, for helping make this possible for all the students here. We're looking forward to a new season of Predators hockey and hope to bring the Stanley Cup back here to Nashville. We want to thank everyone for watching, and go Predators.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tuck and Brian Show. Well, today we have some very important guests. Do you mind telling me who they are, Brian?
We have a couple special announcers from the Predators today.
Oh,
Come and
yes.
visit us.
Some Predators? Speaking of, Predators, come in. Let's go on and take a seat.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Yes, thank you for having us here.
All right.
Woo, yeah.
This is our kitty.
Hope there isn't any string. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you for coming.
Glad to be here. I mean, with the great special offers they gave us. Did you want to buy that Escalade right now? Or I think that's what we're getting for being here.
Well, it sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This question is what we're going to do for Nash.
Oh, yeah, Nash.
Brought him along.
Probably
Yeah.
like a big string that swings around.
No, I think he wants something more special than that. And he deserves it, too.
Yeah, he does, since the last game. So just for the guests, not guests, the people watching,
The
what are your
massive
names?
audience. My name is Pete Weber.
No. Yeah. And yours?
Willie Downey.
And of course, Nash. Of
Nash
course.
with a G.
Yeah, G. Don't forget that. So for yet again, the people watching, what do you do for a living?
I sit behind a table and I talk for about 3 hours at a time. Every night the Predators play.
Kind of like my job.
Yeah, there you go.
If you don't mind me asking, when were the Predators first founded?
They played their first game October 10, 1998.
Okay.
A little bit prior to your first birthday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And Pete here was at the table describing what he just said. He was describing the action that particular night. I was there that night as well, so was Nash. And so he and I both do what's called the play-by-play, where you're describing the action on the ice when the team goes out there. So it's super fast, but it's a lot of fun.
Huh. Well, I just also want to ask, how long have you been in this field?
Me?
Yeah.
Do you like to do very complicated math?
Sure.
Okay. 2019 minus 1972, that's how many years I've been doing it.
What is that?
47.
47, yeah.
47, and you?
For me, I go back to 1993. That's when I graduated from college. So that's when I started getting into business and then evolved into where we are now. So what is, I didn't do the math on that one either. So that was
26.
26.
Yeah,
Okay.
26.
And I'm just going to wildly guess, Nash, how long have you been doing this?
You got to count up the claws. And remember,
yeah,
he's got
count
one less.
claws.
Yeah. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, it's going to take a long time. I'll say 10, 18?
It's more than that because he was there that very first night.
Yeah.
So
20.
October 1998. So that is, as long as the Predators have been a team, we've had Nash. 1998.
Yep.
Huh,
He
well,
gets his shots every year.
Yes.
We'll take him in for that.
Hasn't lost a step either.
No.
a step?
Well, he does quite a few tricks out there, Nash. You can see him coming down from the rafters, rappelling. You can see him sliding along the ice. Sometimes he rides a four-wheeler out there.
Four-wheeler?
You never know what he's going to be doing.
Sometimes he almost decapitated a linesman.
A linesman.
Yes. Oh, okay, okay.
I guess we don't want to.
Well, this is a kind of a weird question, but what's your pregame routine?
I go down to the media dining room, have some dinner, and to describe a pregame routine for a play-by-play guy, it's like something you're preparing for every day in one way or another. Watching the other team play on television or on the internet, and just trying to get down the identification of those guys.
I think it's a good way to say it is you're studying for a test, right? You got a test that night when the game starts, so you want to be absorbing all the material you can about the two teams. It's a little easier to talk about the team that we cover every game because we're around those guys every day. It's a little more challenging the opponent that night who you're going to see just a few times per season. So you're studying up just like you would study for a test at school, but it's a little more fun studying for this test than maybe algebra or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Or, differential equations, brutal. But just keep in mind, to play 82 games, we see a team as little as 3 times a season or as many times as 5 outside of the 6 exhibition games.
All right, well, I think this is a good timeline, but I'm really sorry. I talk all day, but I got to cut you right here. Well, one last question. What about the taunts? Can you tell me about those? Actually, you know what? We don't have enough time.
That's too bad.
Oh,
Nash likes
actually,
to
hold
talk
on.
about
Let me
time for
check
one
my
more
clock.
question?
Oh, yeah, you question.
Do you guys get nervous or excited? Does the team get nervous and excited before the game or anything like that?
I can't
That's a
speak
good
for the
question.
team.
Yeah, the team. I mean, I think you want to be a little bit nervously excited. I know with our crowd at Bridgestone Arena, we really get it rocking, right? It's full every night. There's a lot of energy, and I know for myself, I want to feed off of that energy, right? I want to feel that. You get that goosebumps. I think we all, if you love to play, it's not quite the same thing as being out there playing, but you want to kind of absorb that same kind of energy and then bring it out on your broadcast.
Yeah, and if I don't get butterflies of some sort before broadcast, I will know that's the time to stop.
Okay.
Yeah, and this character back here, his job is to get the crowd going, right? So that's part of what he does to kind of get that energy the way it wants to be. If he doesn't like it, he'll get the drum going, he'll get the crowd going, and so that it all contributes to the atmosphere that we create.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think that was enough, right? Yeah. All right. Well,
People have told us that before, yeah.
True. Have a good day, and most of all, keep it good.